Okay, good. For those of you that have been here before, you know we share a lot of the same information, but we always have some good news and some updates for you. So if you've heard some of this before, hang tight, but hopefully we'll have some new information that'll be useful for you. For those of you that are new and haven't heard us before, I want to tell you a little bit about myself first. I am a registered dietitian, and I have non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So I've been living gluten-free for about 5.5 years now. I have 2 boys, 12 and 14, and I'm married, and I'm the only one in my house that has to live gluten-free. And Charlie here is a category merchant. I'll let him introduce himself in just a second, but when I get to take products home to try, it's one thing if I like it, but if I can get my 3 guys to like it, I let them know we have a home run. So let me just turn this over to you.
Sure, thanks Trish. As Trish mentioned, she's really one of my test beds for pretty much everything that you see on the shelf, at least new here lately. But I've been with Wegmans 18 years, and I've been a category merchant within Nature's Marketplace, which is really where we kind of keep the hub for the gluten-free section. But as you know, we're really trying to expand and really hopefully through today and some of the things that we continue to do as a company is really, it's really a total store. You know, we have over 1,700 items with the Wegmans brand, and some are uniquely gluten-free, some are pastas and baked mixes and some new things that we're doing. But then, you know, there's the rest of the items, and hopefully, you know, that, you know, really our goal is to make living with the disease or the sensitivity for yourself or a family member, you know, easy, and it should be. And, you know, really that comes right from the top of our company. Danny and Colleen and Nicole have some family members that, you know, have some sensitivities and whatnot, so they know what it's like. Maybe not to live with it, but certainly to have someone in their family. And so they recognize, you know, really it's a need-based, you know, hopefully solution or, you know, problem. And then, you know, we're really focused on, you know, kind of offering hopefully some good solutions, or, you know, around food. You know, we're a food company. This is a food disease and problem, but we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And I think, you know, it's a journey. That's probably the biggest thing that I'll say. And, you know, since having been on the desk for 10 years and seeing the evolution of products that have really changed from, you know, the energy breads and bricks of products that, you know, some who've been around longer than I have kind of, you know, just accepted, but really the evolution of quality in the category, I think, you know, has really evolved, and which is a good thing. There's big brands that are now getting into the category, which is good, I think, for the consumer, and hopefully you've appreciated that. And, you know, what we're doing as a company too, you know, our you know, we'll talk a little bit about the bake mixes and so on, but, you know, it's really as much about hopefully delivering, you know, and, you know, quality is number one. We'll never accept anything less than that, but, you know, making it more value-added and affordable to live with it. So that's my 2 cents, and like I said, I'll be around to answer any questions, and, you know, Trish and I will kind of go back and forth on the presentation.
Thank you, Charlie. And as he mentioned, obviously, the whole drive of Wegmans to help connect and better serve the gluten-free community does come from Danny and Colleen, but it also comes from customers like you. I actually work out of our consumer affairs department, and how many of you are familiar with our gluten-free wellness kit? Okay, good. That dates back to 2001. That's when we launched our Wellness Key program. Prior to that, we had a list that we would publish, and we would connect with our suppliers and identify what items were gluten-free. Okay? We've been doing that since the mid to late 80s. And I say that because you all know Wegmans. It's been interesting for me as we go into some of these new states and new markets where we're opening up and people don't know Wegmans. Some people get skeptical. They're like, oh, they're probably just jumping on the bandwagon. And it's like, no, it's really from listening to customers' calls and requests since the 80s that we developed first that list, and we still maintain that, and I'll cover that in a few minutes. But then when we launched this front of the package icon system, that wellness key program, one of the unique keys that is outside of what the FDA says you can call a product, like low sodium, heart healthy, they defined those definitions and the keys that we have that go with them. But gluten-free is one that we uniquely did, largely because of the request from customers to help them shop. So it really does come from A, from customers, and B, from the support from Danny. And I know Charlie had passed around our new brochure. We updated that. And we did it in conjunction. We actually had the opportunity to talk with Dr. Fasano down in Maryland and his dietitian. A couple of you are nodding. I know Dr. Fasano spoke with you a couple of years ago. For those of you who remember our old brochure, we used to have a list of safe, unsafe, and questionable ingredients, and they really encouraged us to simplify our message, and that's what you'll see in this brochure. It's a lot simpler. We've got our wellness key, and then there's some information in the back that they really helped us to simplify that message. So we're also not just doing this on our own. We are trying to connect with some of the experts in the field and trying to help stay ahead of the gluten-free curve. So that's the brochure that you have in front of you. I'm going to walk through some of them, because those of you that haven't heard us before, how many of you are new to the diet within a month or less? Okay. Are you feeling overwhelmed? Okay. First thing I want to say is try to focus on the positive. I'm sure everybody here in the support group will share that with you. I know the first thing your mind goes to is what you can't have. The good news is there are so many foods that you can have. And the first thing I always like to point out when I talk to folks are all of the foods that are naturally gluten-free. So all that wonderful produce, plain fruits, plain vegetable, plain meat, plain chicken, fish, milk. And yes, there are naturally gluten-free grains. There is a whole lot that you still can eat. And as Charlie mentioned, for those items, usually the grain-based items, there are so many more options today, to the point where it's not just about options, but it's about personal preferences. Because I will say, if he lets me try things, there are things that I don't like that a lot of our customers do. And you know what? It's great to think that there can be options. I know it gets frustrating sometimes because we can't carry everything. You might like this bread, I might like that bread, but he can only stock one of them. But that's the beauty of it. It's getting better and it's getting more diverse. But that's the first thing I want to share with those of you that are new to it. Please remember there are a whole bunch of foods that you can still enjoy and that you love. What we're trying to do in making shopping easier for you is, I think it's been 2.5 years ago that we actually had a meeting with Danny, and he said, if somebody were new to the diet and they walked into our stores, where would they start? He wanted us to create a destination. And for years, a lot of the branded items have been in Nature's Marketplace. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically the specialty store within our store. It's where a lot of the special diet, organic, and natural products are, and where a lot of the gluten-free, like the energy bread, for one example, were stocked. It's also a place that's constantly changing and evolving, and it's a category where we're constantly training our managers for that department. So we thought, well, doesn't it make the most sense to start there? Because this is where we're bringing in those branded gluten-free items. The managers are learning about those items. What better place to start a new customer shopping there and then help teaching them how to shop the rest of the store. So we're trying to make it easier by creating that destination. We have what we call some hub stores. Charlie, I don't know if you want to mention a little bit about the hub store idea here in Rochester.
Yeah, Trish. Obviously we've got some stores with bigger footprints, and in those stores we try to over-index, and maybe some of it is bringing even some of the items from the rest of the aisle, some of our Wegmans brand items, even into the Nature's area, just to help customers understand, especially new customers. And I think that's one of the areas where we, again, this isn't something that there's going to be a finite end. least to my knowledge. I know they're working on vaccines. I hear all the different things, but until that happens, there's new customers coming into our stores every day, newly diagnosed. So in order to continue to, showcase the items that we do have, we try to create some of the hub store, and really that's where we've piloted some of the things that we're doing now. Our, what we're doing in prepared foods and our, no gluten by ingredient call-outs that we have in our deli and prepared foods. That all evolved out of some hub store, we'll call it research and development that we did, and based on feedback from you and many of our other customers in other markets. So really, that just kind of allows us to, at the same time, also test different things. And so, when we do some of those things, I know it's a challenge because a customer that lives in Brockport that sees something in Pittsburgh says, I want that there. Well, that's why it allows us to kind of have that format to do some of those things and to get some acceptance or to kind of, run it through its, I'll call it the upsides and the downsides of different things as you can appreciate. Because everything that we try, and if anyone's been with Wegmans for a long time, you've seen a lot of things go. The one thing that's constant is the rate of change. That's probably the one thing I said. We're always looking to evolve, and we don't want to ever lose sight of changing consumer needs. And I think that's probably the one thing. So we traditionally don't do anything, hopefully, that is impactful in a negative way. Sometimes it can feel like that because we move some things around, or a brand may go and a new brand may come in. But I think hopefully at the end of the day, we're working on hopefully continue to evolve the categories, and that hub store kind of allows us to do that.
And you mentioned a few minutes ago about the Wegmans brand products. Charlie had mentioned we have over 1,700 of them. The wellness key that I mentioned, I was having a couple of conversations with folks before we started. I wanted to just take a moment to clarify a couple things with that. And first I wanted to explain what is the criteria behind our gluten-free wellness key. Secondly, why it is you might see it on some products but not other products when it looks like it should be gluten-free. Okay? And then we'll go into the no-gluten ingredients we talked about in prepared foods. Over 1,700, as we mentioned before, that have met our criteria for gluten-free. And again, for those of you that are new, you may or may not be aware of the fact that right now, there's not a national definition for what it means to call a product gluten-free. We've been waiting for the FDA to finalize a ruling. They were supposed to announce it back in 2008. They got a lot of comments from folks. They put together a proposal. They sent it back out for comment. And now we're waiting to hear, and ideally we hope to hear by the end of this calendar year. That's their target. So we're hoping that we'll hear something soon. In the interim, it's up to each individual company to either go with like a third-party certification, like if you've seen the GFCO, the Certified Gluten-Free with the circle. I know CSA has one. There's different third-party certifications. Some companies have their own definition. We have our own definition. And it dates back to that list I talked about that we started in the 80s. And basically there's 4 things that have to be in place in order for us to call a Wegmans brand item gluten-free. The first is it has to be made with gluten-free ingredients. The second is it has to be either made in a dedicated facility or in a facility where the manufacturer can guarantee that there's no risk of cross-contact. So they have processes in place to clean the lines, make sure that there's no risk. Third, the supplier needs to stand behind a gluten-free claim. And finally, we, Wegmans, also have to feel comfortable standing behind that claim. If any one of those don't get met, we don't call it gluten-free. And I will say we do have some suppliers that by ingredient, something might look like it's gluten-free, but they might feel like, gosh, there could be that chance that there's wheat in the facility, so they can't stand behind that gluten-free claim, so we won't label it. Great example is our cornstarch. Our Wegmans brand cornstarch, only ingredient cornstarch, naturally gluten-free, but that supplier can't stand behind the claim because the facility that it's in, a lot of airborne, other particles, so that was not gluten-free. Got another example. We've got mozzarella in the block, mozzarella that's shredded. Those of you who've heard this before, don't yell out the answer. One has the key, the wellness key, one does not. Does anybody want to guess? Is it the block or the shredded that has the gluten-free wellness key?
Shredded.
The shredded. No, but that's true. Was anybody surprised? Did anybody think it was the block? Exactly. What it boils down to, 2 different suppliers. The one that does the shredded can stand behind that claim, the other one doesn't. Why don't they? We don't push them. It could be R&D. It could be they're not comfortable because FDA hasn't finalized it. Bottom line, they won't stand behind the claim. We won't put the G on there. Okay? So that I wanted to share with you first. Second is, let me just back up for a minute to the single ingredient, like the cornstarch that I gave you. There are times when you'll look at a product, it looks like it should be gluten-free, but there's no key. In the case of single ingredient items, I was explaining to a couple of folks before, typically they don't like you to make claims on single ingredient items. So we typically don't put any wellness key on single ingredient items. Just in general, not even wellness, or not even the gluten-free, we don't put any on. So when you're looking at a product that's a single ingredient item and there is no key, like our Italian classics of Oreo rice. Only ingredient is the rice. Your safeguard to know if it's gluten-free and meets our criteria is go to Wegmans.com/gluten-free. Go to our online list of products. It's a PDF that you can actually type in rice. It will take you to all the rice items. It will give you the UPC code, and you'll find it that way. Okay? So that's for single ingredient items. For products that have more than one ingredient, if there's not the G, it's probably the scenario like I just went through with the block mozzarella. But if you ever have a question, you can call Consumer Affairs, and please they can explain to you why it is. Yes?
How often is that list updated?
That list is updated every Monday. And right now it hovers between 28 and 30 pages because we actually do have products that can change, whether it's new products coming on or manufacturers changing ingredients or production facilities and keys might have to come off. So we don't recommend you print it. You can look at it online. Or if you don't have internet access, you can call Consumer Affairs. At least they'll print you that week's list and send it to you. Okay, yes?
What about the pharmaceuticals at the Wegmans stores? Is there a pharmaceutical list that lists the products that are gluten-free manufactured?
Yeah. So the question basically is gluten-free pharmaceuticals. And unfortunately, at this point, no. Just like we don't have an FDA list, we don't have one, or a definition, we don't have one for pharmaceuticals. That one's even harder. I mean, the good news I will say is everything I've learned from, the National Foundation for Celiac Awareness, pharmaceutical companies, the use of gluten-containing ingredients in pharmaceuticals is low, but it happens. So they're really pushing to see if they can get FDA to just ban it from its use. But we're not there yet. So it always has to be a case-by-case calling, and pharmacy does try to call the manufacturer based on what their medication is, so it does sometimes take longer. We just don't have an automated system at this time. Having said that, for over-the-counter for Top Care is not Wegmans brand, but we do have a good relationship with them. They are moving towards labeling their over-the-counter medications that are gluten-free. In the interim, one of our consumer affairs specialists works closely, so if you want to know if a particular Top Care item is gluten-free, you can call. They don't have a list, so she's got to find out, but at least we can find out that way for you. Okay. I saw a hand over here. Yes?
You can go on the internet and go to glutenfreedrugs.com.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, that is a place that you can go as glutenfreedrugs.com, and I do know that our pharmacists do use that as like a first point to see, and then they'll still call and verify. So thank you. So that is something we know is a definite need. So, any other questions before I go on? Okay, good. So I just wanted to clear that up between the items that have the G, single ingredient items, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about the philosophy. For years, our merchants would work with our suppliers, and any time if we could make a product gluten-free, that was the goal. And a great example, the culinary stocks that we launched probably 5-6 years ago. The merchant who was working on that actually had a child with celiac disease, and he knew how challenging it was to find a broth or a stock that was gluten-free, so he worked with the supplier, and all of the Wegmans culinary stocks are gluten-free. So that's really for years been our driving force, is if we can make it gluten-free, let's do so. But last year, for those of you who were here when we came in July, we launched our very first, what we call uniquely gluten-free Wegmans brand item. And it's right there in the center. It's the gluten-free chicken nuggets. And that was the first time that we actively went out and asked our suppliers, look, this is something that we have a need for. And we're slowly starting to do more of that with the waffles the kids are trying today. I don't know if you've seen our frozen waffles. If you haven't, they're $8 to a box. And they're, what, $1.99?
Oh, wow.
And depending on the store, they're either going to be in the freezer case in Nature's and or the regular frozen department. And then our next is the baked mixes, and I don't know if you want to take a minute to talk about
Sure. And, you know, Tricia mentioned, you know, our baked mixes, which was certainly a signature type item, and everyone who bought it should have been, notified, but we did have a recall. And really the recall was based on, cross-contact with other allergens. The one thing that we never tested positive, either in the ingredient or the final product, was gluten. But we did have some cross-contact with soy, dairy, and tree nuts. And some of those things, as we're discovering, are very, very difficult based upon either our vendor and or the potential for cross-contact. So, those were all pulled. I would say half of them we didn't need to pull. But, again, I think it goes back to, our commitment to ensuring that, if we're not comfortable with it, again, I think the litmus test was, Caitlin's like, if I'm not comfortable with selling it to, a family member, would you, want to sell that to our customers? And I think that's how we looked at it. And yes, there's, certainly a lot of product that we pull, but at the end of the day, it's worth doing the right thing and being transparent. So they'll all be relaunching here, hopefully sooner than later. They still have to go through some QA testing. Just really, the gluten piece of it has always been, or no gluten, we've been very consistent and never had any issues with that. It's some of those other allergens, which for many of you folks and many of our customers are very near and dear to their hearts, certainly dairy and or soy and tree nuts. So we want to make sure that if we're not comfortable or the vendor or what we think, we're going to call those items out. And there may be some people that say, geez, Charlie, I was buying that before, it said it didn't have tree nuts. Now you're saying that it may contain, that's really what we're finding out. We're going to try and continue to evolve, and either through our supplier being able to source products or work on a, really continue to test. If we feel we can get to a 0, then, potentially we'll relabel with it out having any may contain statements on there. But, we're not sure, and so we want to be transparent with the customer. Some, companies may do it a little bit different. I don't know. I just know what we do, and what we're committed to. So, I apologize for the inconvenience. Nobody was more disappointed than certainly myself and many of the other. In our stores, we're very excited. We have, our cookies in Menu Magazine. That's a big deal for us to be, quite honestly, I'll tell you as a merchant, you work towards those kind of things to have that kind of, I'll call it signature marketing and all the things that go behind it, and then have to pull that product off. That's certainly not a good day for anybody. And I know, and it's more just about, things that we're really proud of. And I would say, that's one of the things all the merchants are working on, is really, I kind of oversee kind of the gluten-free initiative for the company, but all of my counterparts and all the different categories in our company, there's a few things that, are kind of, we call them priorities, and gluten-free, or this is a priority category for us as a company. And so, they're all looking towards developing products either that are, could be gluten-free just by making a few changes, like the culinary stocks, or uniquely gluten-free. So I won't, tell you that what's coming down the road, because we're still working on developing those, but I can be sure that you'll see some more new items like the waffles, like some other things that we're working on that I think hopefully will meet or exceed your expectations. I think waffles are a great example of something that's like, why can't we do this and do it better than anybody else? And I think based on what we've seen, and certainly just being able to kind of get down to a price that is really the same price that you pay if you're buying a regular waffle. That's kind of our goal. So signature items, we recognize they're important, but the key, I think, like our pastas, really you helped us develop those. If anyone remembers, a couple of years ago, we had some focus groups in a couple of our markets. Pittsburgh was one. We brought in all the different types of pastas, potential vendors, and that was the one that won out. And so it's fortunate that because of the way in our partnership with this vendor, we're able to get it out there. We're at $1.39. That's a darn great price for any pasta, let alone gluten-free. So if we think we can do it and do it profitable and at the same time affordable, that's our goal. Quality is the one thing that you've experienced, you've seen the full gamut of quality that's out there, and consistency in quality is a big thing for us. And if anything that has the Wegmans name on it, we're gonna stand by it, but at the same time it has to meet that high level. And so, believe it or not, we've said no to more things than we probably have, just because we're just not. If we can't beat or exceed what's out there, we're really kind of focused on having superior products. And I think our bake mixes are a great example of something that really it kind of came out of backwards. We really didn't look at it from a gluten-free. We asked some of our artisan bakers to say, create the best cookie, brownie, some of these kind of products, and use these ingredients. And so they have a little bit of somewhat of a mat to start from, but our brownies, when we had them on the shelf, were one of the top selling brownies in the entire store, outselling Betty Crocker regular brownie mix. And people, I know there's a core customer. We made those signature items for you and folks like yourself. But once other people tried them, people were like, this isn't just a great brownie. It just happens to be gluten-free. And when we can achieve those two things, that's the ultimate success model. And that's really where, again, it's really working. Like I said, Patty Fowler, who some of you will meet. We've got some things coming out. We've got some videos that you'll see online here a little bit about some baking. She's been a baker for 30 years maybe. I'm probably dating her a little bit, but she's phenomenal. I mean, she's forgotten more about pastries and everything else. And she said, "Oh, I can do this. This is easy." And and in a short period of time, short to me, maybe a little bit longer for her, she developed these products where, Trisha's been sampling stuff, that I've been giving her from the branded folks, and immediately we had something that was better than anything I've ever seen presented to me from a branded end. So that's some of the fun stuff. And really as a company, those are the things that when people say, what motivates you to get up in the morning to go to work and do certain things. I'm fortunate, one, to work for a company that allows me to do these kind of things, but you have this vision, and everybody's kind of focused around it, kind of pushing all in the same direction.
So I want to explain a little bit about prepared foods. Again, especially for those of you that are new, that's a common question that we get is, are any of your prepared foods gluten-free? We tried to do a pilot a couple of years ago in Buffalo. There's 2 chefs there that have worked with their local support group. They often host dinners at restaurants where the whole dinner is gluten-free. So those 2 chefs knew what it was like to do one night of a dinner that was gluten-free, so we thought it would be better to help us learn what we might be able to do day to day. And unfortunately, we found that we are not able at this time to implement company-wide protocols to make gluten-free prepared foods, largely because our stores, they're not cookie-cutter designs. They don't have the same equipment and layouts. I was at one store where literally the pizza shop was right next to the deli, and another one where it's way on the other side. So the best that we could do at this point was identify what was made with what we call no gluten ingredients. So the core recipe for some of our prepared food items, we've been able to verify that the ingredients that were used don't contain gluten, but because the production facility, some of these items are on self-serve bars, we can't guarantee that gluten won't be present. We know it's not meeting everybody's needs, but for those people that feel comfortable, at least you have that information, know that we're still working. We're still looking for options, but unfortunately, unlike a restaurant, we just don't have a facility to dedicate an area and really create gluten-free foods. I mentioned earlier about those lists on Wegmans.com. So this is a snapshot of, if you type in Wegmans gluten-free Wegmans.com/gluten-free, it will take you to this page. We've recently updated it so that the content matches what you have in the new brochure. We've also added a few different links. We still have our seasonal recipes. I know I've told some of you this before. Another common request that we've heard is folks get Menu Magazine, they love it, but they can't make the entrees in it. So about 2 years ago, we made a commitment to have at least 5 entree recipes per season that would be gluten-free. They're not always in the magazine. Just because the way the production is, we can't do dual, so we're able to put it online. And why this is different is what we've done is we don't just say, all we have to do is swap out that ingredient, it'll be gluten-free. We actually get the ingredient and we run it through our test kitchen because gluten-free ingredients don't behave the same as traditional. So cook times can vary, amounts of product might vary. So anything that you see on Wegmans.com where the beginning of the name is gluten-free and then whatever, that's your cue that it was a recipe that we had to modify with the ingredients, but we did test it, okay? Other recipes were already gluten-free, and we assigned the wellness key to those. And you can actually search Wegmans.com recipes by the gluten-free wellness key. Or you can at least go and see what the seasonal ones are that we're highlighting for that season. This is just giving you, I know it's kind of hard for you folks to see what this is trying to illustrate in this upper left corner is that's the gluten-free wellness key. So if you were to click on that, you could drill down a recipe search. So if you wanted to do it by course or time or ingredient, you can do that. And you can see people can rate them and their stars, and then you can even, if you like the recipe, select it. All the ingredients get added to a shopping list. You can tailor it to the store where you shop. You know what aisle you'll find the ingredients are in. If you have an iPhone, you can have an iPhone shopping list. So it makes it really, really easy for you. We also have an ongoing product catalog where, again, we know some of you do have other food intolerances or allergies. So if you wanted to see the full ingredient list or nutrition facts of an item, you can search our online product catalog. Again, it looks very much like Amazon in that people can write quotes or rate it. Again, you can add it to that shopping list. This is giving you a little bit of an image of what you would see if you were to bring up our tomato basil pasta sauce. All of the wellness keys that you would have seen on the label will be there if appropriate. And then I wanted to spend a word on our consistent low pricing because, again, living gluten-free can be very expensive. I mean, a loaf of gluten-free bread is often many times more than regular bread. The nice thing about the consistent low pricing, right now, through the end of this calendar year, we've got the list of the Wegmans brand items, the locked in the prices, 96 of them are gluten-free. And this doesn't count those naturally gluten-free foods I was talking about before, like the fruits and vegetables. So it's the packaged items that are going to have that wellness key. So again, that's another way that you can make it affordable in using Wegmans brand and the consistent low pricing. How many of you get fresh news emails from Wegmans? Okay, more of you than the last time, that's good. For the rest of you, if you're interested, it's a free service. You can go to Wegmans.com, sign up for Fresh News, and what this is, it's an email that we send out once a week. It's a regular Fresh News service. So it tells you about new products, events, recipes. But then once a month, we have a special gluten-free edition. So if you sign up for the regular Fresh News email, there's an opt-in that they put in that email communication, or once you sign up, contact Consumer Affairs and they can add you to the distribution list. This is an example of the most recent one that just went out a little over a week ago. So on the left-hand side is kind of what that gluten-free Fresh News email looked like. The other side is our blogs. So we actually have a monthly blog that correlates with the email. And this is another way that we can communicate with you about new products or services. We also tie a coupon with that email. So for those of you that don't have Fresh News, I encourage you to go home and sign up for it. And like I say, either contact Consumer Affairs or look for that opt-in feature. The next one will be going out probably early to mid-December. You can also read the blog post at any time. But this one, I was so excited because how many of you love ham and were curious about our signature ham? Because for years, our signature ham had gluten. And our merchant worked with the supplier. They were able to source an alternate ingredient. So I was so excited in this most recent blog to announce that now all of Wegmans brand hams are gluten-free, including the signature ham. And even better, it's a USDA product where in the past, USDA would only let us put the words gluten-free. Now they've told us we can start using the icon, the little G in the circle too. So it's one of the first USDA items that has the icon. So as we bring products that either need to be relabeled or new products, hopefully you'll see both the key and the words. But signature ham is gluten-free. That was huge. And then finally, recall notification. So Charlie had mentioned it before, and how many of you, when the recall did go through, how many of you received an automated phone call from Wegmans? Okay. This is a message that I like to share with folks because our structure, we don't do what some supermarkets call high-low, where things are on sale one week, then they're high the next week. We really do try to have that consistent low pricing. I particularly love that because I live in a 100-year-old house. I have very little storage, so flow packs don't work for me. So I love that I can buy things when I need it. But I've heard over the years that customers aren't using the Shoppers Club card as often because there's not many things that are tied to get a discount, right? Makes sense, right? But in 2007, we launched this recall notification program that if you purchase an item and you used your Shoppers Club card when you purchased it, and if for some reason that item were recalled, we will try to notify you by telephone as long as we have your updated phone number. So I really encourage folks to do that. And when at first I heard that, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a nice service, whatever. And I was out of town, and we had recalls about 3-4 years ago where the ground beef was recalled. Again, I don't buy a lot of things and stock them and freeze them. And my husband told me, oh, we got this automated phone call that the ground beef was recalled. I said, yeah, no big deal. He goes, no, Trish. The message said, check your freezer. We had some. Like, you're kidding me. So it really, to this day, I really cherish that we have that service. So I really encourage you, even if you don't think something's on special or Shoppers Club, give them that card, because if by chance something were to recall, this is our chance to let you know that that item could be in your freezer and you could have forgotten about it. So that's really kind of in summary what Charlie and I wanted to share with you, especially those of you that were new, a little bit about how we try to make it easier for you to live gluten-free, a little bit about our philosophies. We've been taking questions all along. We will continue to do so, but before I forget, there's one important point I want to encourage those of you that are new to do. Remember how I mentioned at the beginning that Nature's Marketplace is that destination? Okay. Get to know the Nature's Marketplace manager in the store that you shop. Because as we said before, there's new products coming in all the time. In fact, the kids downstairs, I brought in some of the special limited edition holiday things just to show them. But by getting to know that nature's person, they can help you know when something is coming in. I just happened to be walking by, I didn't realize we had gluten-free gingerbread. I was walking by this, like, oh my gosh, and I grabbed it, I'm like, should have asked Julie. So get to know them, just whether it's you're looking for something and you're not sure, or just, hey Julie, what's in that's gluten-free? They'd be happy to point that out to you. So that's one tip I wanted to share. Charlie, you want to say something?
No, I just, just like Trish said, I think, that our nature's person is, this is a category that, we know that there's new products, there's quite a bit of innovation taking place, maybe more so than a lot of other categories. So, it's really where we do launch a lot of the, some of the branded items, and anything that's a Wegmans brand that's uniquely gluten-free will be in, the nature's department. So it's always a good place to, kind of start that journey. And many of you are already there. If you're already shopping, you know what we carry. But, I'll say, given the explosion of the category in the industry, there are a lot of new items that are coming in. Some are better than what we currently carry, which is always tough because, it's the Sophie's choice decision. I've never discontinued an item yet that it wasn't somebody's favorite. And that's just, those are the ghosts that I sleep with and everything else as far as I'd love to tell you, we've always made great decisions. We haven't. So, and we'll continue to, maybe discontinue an item that, looks on paper to be, not as favorable or well received. And it turns out a great example is the Ancient Harvest quinoa pastas. About 5 years ago, I couldn't sell those. I mean, they were literally one of the lowest end of our categories and how we measured things. And in fact, I think they were barely surviving in the category. And then quinoa took off, and people started understanding the nutritional benefits of quinoa. It's one of our best items. And so, those are the kind of things where what we know today and what consumers are interested in, changes. And as the category evolves or new items are coming in, like I said, and Trish is unfortunately, sometimes the test bed for some of the items. But we have some folks internally that, beyond Trish, that we also, and then, we work a lot with our suppliers. And it's tough, but I'll say, that's, as a category, if anyone's been around, I would say 10 years, we used to have only about 8 feet, maybe 12 feet in some stores. We just opened our newest store down in Crofton, Maryland, and we have almost 72 feet of grocery dedicated in the nature department for gluten-free, and we have 8 doors of frozen. And that's not counting all the other products throughout the store. So, maybe that's too much. I mean, that's one of the things, I guess, working for a company as I do, as I mentioned, when somebody says, well, Charlie, what could we do if we had more space? Well, we're going to find out. And so the good news is it's well received. One of our markets up in Northborough, Massachusetts, when we opened that store, right away they became one of our top stores in the entire company for the gluten-free category. It's how we measure it. Just because nobody in that market was doing anything. I mean, basically people were, it was very, very, and if anyone's lived in that market, Boston, I apologize, but nobody recognized the consumer. Nobody really was doing anything. And when we came in there immediately, that store became a destination for the celiac community and customers, and just was fortunate. Again, Trish just came back from an event, a couple events up in Northborough, done some things up there. So, those are the things, and really I'll echo Trish's comment about signing up for the fresh news emails, because it's one of our ways to communicate and through the blogs and those things, but it really is a two-way communication. That's, I want to thank everybody for inviting us here, because that's really our, we want to, we're part of the community. Trish mentioned, talking to the Nature's folks. That's a great way. If you find a new item or something that you saw, you were traveling, and that's how, quite honestly, we found some of our products. I'd love to tell you that every